In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my top 5 reasons why sketchbooks are such incredible tools for artists, and I'm also going to be sharing 5 practical tips that will help you get the most out of them. Throughout this video, I'm also going to be sharing a time lapse for a personal piece that I created in a sketchbook that I am working on right now. So much of my skill development when it comes to drawing and even having started with watercolor comes down to keeping a sketchbook habit. It was through keeping a sketchbook habit and carrying a small sketchbook around with me when I was out and about, and even taking one with me to my last regular full-time position, that I was able to stay consistent enough with my practice in order to build up my skills to a higher level to be able to start my own art business. Consistency is everything, and I always say that working on smaller pieces several times a week is much better than working on one super large piece that you spend hours and hours on every 5 to 6 months. I used every 5 to 15 minutes that I had available in between classes that I was teaching and my lunch breaks and such to work on little sketches of objects that I had around me on my desk, or to even advance a watercolor study a little bit in that time. Sketchbooks are also great because they provide a safe place for you to play, experiment, and just practice. You don't have to worry about creating anything perfect or wasting expensive art supplies. You can advance essential skills, as I'm going to be talking about in just a bit, with just a sketchbook. It can even be a cheaper one, and basic drawing supplies. With all that said, let's jump in. To begin, here are the 5 main reasons why sketchbooks can be absolutely invaluable tools for an artist's growth. Reason number 1 is they are a chronological record of your progress. Oftentimes, even though we're putting in a lot of time and effort into our art practice, it can seem like we're not making much progress at all. In my opinion, it is absolutely essential to pause every now and then and look back in order to see the immense growth that we have had through staying consistent. And sketchbooks serve as tangible, hard proof of your progress. If you fill up a sketchbook consistently, focusing on those areas that you want to improve on, by the point that you reach that last page, you'll be able to compare those drawings or paintings that you created to the ones that you created in the beginning, and you're likely going to see a lot of growth. When I go back to my sketchbooks from 2016, 2017, I'm reminded of how far I've come, and this is incredibly motivating. It makes me want to keep going. Sketchbooks are like a diary of your growth. The second reason why sketchbooks are such great tools is because they keep your work protected for you. I lost so many of those first drawings and paintings that I created, and I deeply regret not practicing in sketchbooks sooner. Also, the few drawings that I have from back in the day when I first started are very damaged and very yellowed because that wasn't actual drawing paper. I was just using regular printing paper, which not only makes the drawing or painting process way more difficult and will not lead to very good outcomes, but also it won't hold up over time. Art sketchbooks contain paper that is intended specifically for different drawing and painting mediums. It is also usually thicker than regular printing paper, and of course it has a cover. So all of this makes it a lot more likely that you'll have everything in one same place and that your artwork will endure over time. Reason number 3 is they are portable and practical. You can do so much to continue developing essential art skills, such as your observational skills and your hand-eye coordination, with just a sketchbook and a few basic drawing supplies. For people who are super busy, this is very helpful because you can use those 15-20 minutes while you're waiting for your kids, in your car even, or while you're waiting for your doctor's appointment to happen, or in between meetings, or during your lunch breaks, the way that I did at that last regular full-time job. Take out your supplies and there is virtually no cleanup involved. I have larger sketchbooks that I work in when I'm in my studio, and I have smaller sketchbooks that I can take with me on errands. I use them for quick sketching and even to jot down ideas for future projects that I don't want to forget. As a creative, I have ideas all the time and I don't want to forget them. So it's very helpful for me to have somewhere to jot these ideas down in. When I absolutely have to, I do it in my notes in my cell phone, but I'm more of a pen and paper type of person. Reason number 4 is sketchbooks provide a pressure-free way of practicing. I often held myself back from drawing and painting because I didn't want to, quote-unquote, waste expensive art supplies. I didn't feel that I had enough time to sit down and create anything of substance or worthwhile or perfect, so I didn't do anything at all. And this is a huge mistake. It wasn't until I understood that quicker sketches and explorations are just as important as the larger pieces that we spend hours on that I was able to stay consistent and made faster progress. Sketchbooks don't have to be expensive and are a safe place to practice without having to worry about producing perfect results. The entire point of a sketchbook is to provide a safe place for you to study and practice and explore and play and get to know yourself. It's a place where you plan and prep and prepare for larger pieces, or where you do the behind the scenes work that we need to do in order to improve our skills and develop as artists. In the past, I've talked about the importance of valuing process over product. A sketchbook is just as valuable as any finalized, more polished piece that you create on a canvas or whatever it is, because a sketchbook is where a lot of that growth and self-discovery took place. And you don't have to show it to anyone if you don't want to. And reason number 5 why sketchbooks are such important tools for artists is because they remind us to keep going, to stay consistent. It is very fulfilling to see those pages in a sketchbook fill up with your pieces. It's this little book that contains a body of work that you've created. And sure, working on separate drawings and paintings on individual sheets of paper is also rewarding, but there's something about sketchbooks and seeing those pages fill up and knowing that there is a certain amount of pages to fill up before finishing that little book that makes you want to keep going. So now I want to provide 5 practical tips that will help you get the most out of your sketchbooks. Tip number 1 is to make sure that you buy a sketchbook that is intended for the drawing or painting mediums that you're going to be using in it. Different sketchbooks have different types of paper in them that may or may not be suitable for the mediums that you're intending to use. If you're planning on using drawing mediums such as graphite pencils and charcoal, or maybe colored pencils, make sure that you're looking for a drawing sketchbook that is intended for dry mediums. If you're planning on bringing in watercolor or ink, make sure that you're buying a sketchbook that is intended for water-soluble mediums, and I would recommend making sure that it has thicker paper. And if you're planning on using mixed media, then there are also mixed media sketchbooks available out there. Just know that a lot of mixed media sketchbooks are not going to be as helpful when you're starting to learn watercolor, for example, and you're trying to create specific wet-on-wet effects where there is a lot of water involved. So if you're wanting to develop your watercolor skills specifically, I would look for a watercolor sketchbook that has paper that is 100% cotton. I did use lots of mixed media sketchbooks when I was first getting started though, and I used all kinds of different mediums in those. There's nothing wrong with starting with those mixed media sketchbooks, especially if you're in that beginning phase in your journey where you're exploring a whole bunch of different mediums. But always make sure that you're reading all of those important characteristics that are usually provided on the cover on that sketchbook. Not only the size of the sketchbook, but also check to see how textured the paper is, how thick the paper is, if it is acid free, and also check to see if it is spiral bound or something else, because you might have a preference. Tip number 2 to make the most out of your sketchbook is make sure that you give it a date. So what I like doing is taking a black Sharpie and writing down the month and year that I started that sketchbook. This is important because, as I mentioned in the first part of this video, sketchbooks are going to serve as a chronological record of your progress. And if you don't write that date down, you can forget when that sketchbook was filled up. You can also, of course, add a date to each spread or each page in your sketchbook after finishing up with that particular study or exploration or whatever you've created. And in the same vein, don't be afraid to write ideas in your sketchbook or little observations you've made on your pieces as you've been working through them. You might want to write down things that you struggled with or areas that you want to improve in or even strengths that you found. Tip number 3 is consider buying yourself a smaller sketchbook and a larger sketchbook, and make sure that you're taking your smaller sketchbook with you whenever possible. I like making sure that I have larger sketchbooks or larger newsprint paper pads, that kind of thing, because those really help me practice moving my entire arm and drawing from the shoulder as opposed to just using my wrist and my forearm when I am drawing. That really helps me develop my pencil control and practice holding a pencil effectively for drawing, which leads to better line quality. But smaller sketchbooks are so great for consistency, especially when you're a busy person. Buy a smaller sketchbook. Maybe it's a drawing sketchbook that you can take in your bag or backpack, and prepare a little pouch with basic drawing supplies, a couple of pencils, a pen, erasers. Take it with you and use any free moments that you have available to draw anything and everything. Tip number 4 is keep your drawings or paintings protected in your sketchbook. When I'm working on pieces that are just purely watercolor, there is not much of an issue if those pages are coming into contact with each other after the paint has dried completely. But when I am working on pieces where I'm using pencil or charcoal or anything else that might smudge, what I like doing is either using fixative or placing a sheet of glassine paper in between those pages. You can also use wax paper or parchment paper or even tracing paper. I like buying larger rolls of glassine paper via Amazon because I use it for various things, but I can just cut those larger sheets down to whatever size I need for my sketchbook. I'll make sure to leave links to a couple of fixatives that are great down below in the text section of this post in case you'd like to check them out. But make sure that if you're using a fixative, you're working in a well-ventilated area because those fumes can make your head hurt and can be pretty toxic. And also make sure that you leave your sketchbook open so that that fixative can dry completely before you close it. And finally, tip number 5 to get the most out of your sketchbook is never fear the blank page. If you're in that phase that so many of us go through where you're sitting in front of that blank page or canvas or whatever it is and you feel anxious and stressed, sometimes so much so that you don't even get started at all, I would recommend just making that page or that canvas less pristine. Because sometimes that's what's so intimidating, the cleanliness and the perfection of it. A couple of ideas that you can do in your sketchbook to make this happen is providing a type of stain or underpainting, if you will. For example, if you're working in a drawing sketchbook, something that you can do is use a few charcoal sticks, just rub them on there and then just blend it out to have a couple of gray tones on your paper and have that abstract shape to start on. And if you're working in a watercolor sketchbook or a mixed media sketchbook, you can create a type of underpainting or a stain by just taking one of your favorite colors and painting it on there. This will provide something to start with and it will make things less overwhelming, less clean looking so that you can just start right away. And to finish up, I just want to remind you, your sketchbook is a place for you to explore and practice. It is not meant to be perfect. I know that a lot of beginners feel that every single piece that you create in your sketchbook has to be perfect, but this is not the case at all. Most of my sketchbooks are filled with a lot of bad drawings and paintings. Most of the work that I create in those sketchbooks is just for me, for my eyes, for my personal growth. And do remember that a lot of the sketchbooks or sketchbook spreads that you see
posted by other artists online on social media. These are the best pieces, the highlight reels, what they actually want you to see. There's also likely years of practice that went on beforehand. And that is going to do it for this week's video. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it inspired you to take up a sketchbook practice. If you have any comments or questions or tips of your own to share, go ahead and leave them down below in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me on this one. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy your art practice and see you very, very soon.